Hello and welcome to this episode of JAKTALK. My name is Jeff Kinsberg and I'm the founder and visionary behind JAKTOOL. JAKTOOL is a precision product development company specializing in next generation thinking, focused on protecting our nation's warfighters and healthcare. JAKTALK is a podcast where we look behind the scenes of how ideas get done, and we work with the people and look at the processes of how we take ideas and take them off the drawing board and get them through production into our customers' hands. Today, I'm with Jesse Catlin. Jesse, welcome.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jesse, you recently new to the team this past quarter with
Yes.
With a long career in precision manufacturing, contract manufacturing on the medtech side.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about how you got to that point in your career.
Well, where do I begin? I've got just nearly 20 years of experience in sales, but like a lot of salespeople, it was an unplanned entrance into that field.
Nobody dreams of sales.
Would you believe it?
I like sales.
Well, the funny part is like sales isn't everything we do, right? I mean, a lot of people don't recognize it or acknowledge it, but whether you're chatting with your wife or with your kids, you're always selling something,
Mm-hmm.
internally at work. It's not just getting a client in, but it's also working with the people and saying, hey, this is a project that we really want to get into. You got to sell that up the chain as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I didn't plan on it. I graduated 2000, gosh, I'm going to date myself, 2005 from Vassar College, degree in political science. Also meandered into that one. Originally was an English major, and got into poli-sci because it was kind of like English with a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And, graduated, and like any story goes, had a girl. She was moving back to California to get her law degree. And I said, yeah, why don't I check out what San Francisco's like and go there? So landed in San Francisco, had prior to going there, gotten a position with a med device company as a sales rep, and specialty was a hernia mesh, and we're going up against the big dogs like Bard Daval with this new PTFE super printed mesh, and it was really, I would say, the best throw them into the sharks experience you could have for sales training.
Mm-hmm.
They flew me out to Ohio, did the whole learning about how to do sales. There's a whole system that they taught us, SCP, sell yourself, sell your company, and then present your proof.
This was an internal selling system or external training?
So it's long enough ago that I don't know if it was cribbed off of something else, but it was presented internally.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I got into that, and the thing I remember the most is they said, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go out and buy yourself a set of scrubs, like what the nurses, doctors wear in the OR. And then you're going to go to a hospital, and you're going to go find the door that says authorized people only. And you're going to go through that door. That's the operating room. Then you're going to find out who the head nurse is, or you've already figured that out before you go in, or whoever the head surgeon is, and go and show them the product and convince them to scrub you in and use it in a surgery. And that's what I did. Believe it or not, it worked. And it was a lot of fun. And it was definitely a lot of no's and a lot of get out of here, and we're not going to see you in this hospital again sort of conversations. But along the way, you really kind of learned, I guess, a certain sense of fearlessness, what's going to happen. But at the same time, you also really learned, what people are looking for and how to present to them, hey, I'm the person that has this for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, really interesting, and it was a really, really cool start to sales. From there, I bumbled into another position totally outside of that. A friend of mine worked for this company called the Learning Annex, and he was programming their website, doing all of their online SEO marketing and everything. And he was flying out to San Francisco, gave me a call and said, hey, we need some extra helpers here. You want to make some extra cash, work in the back end of the show. And the show was the Learning Annex Real Estate and Wealth Expo. Now, this is before the 2008 crash.
Mm-hmm.
So it was amazingly good timing to make a lot of money, and then also amazingly bad timing because then the real estate market just cratered suddenly out of nowhere. I say out of nowhere, a lot of people it seemed like that, but we definitely had some canaries in the coal mine along the way. You start calling your Georgia Log Homes and your Florida Land clients, that they go and they buy a booth at every show. And I was selling the exhibit booth space as an independent position, totally commission only, just sink or swim. Mm-hmm. And when I started calling them and I was getting that signal, this is back when everybody still had landlines. Yeah. We're sorry, this phone has been disconnected.
You knew.
I said, this is funny. So I quickly got a job as a waiter just to keep the money going. And then that company, they're still around today. They still do it, just in a different field. They stopped that show for a while, and now they're doing some other things. But I transitioned from a couple of months as that waiter job and got into this company called, it was an engineered tension membrane structure and used in construction. Mm-hmm. And you might say, well, the real estate market just crashed, Jesse. What are you doing getting into construction sales? And it was interesting because it was actually a very well-positioned product for what happened because people still needed to build. They just needed to build more cheaply and more efficiently, mm-hmm. but they needed a building solution that also offered essentially a permanent solution for a lot of these customers. And that's where that product fit in quite nicely. At the same time, they had the TARP going on. I forget what that stands for, but it was basically the government-led initiative to stimulate the economy with mm-hmm. infrastructure spending. And part of that infrastructure spending was where I really made my success at that company. We were in, I want to say, about 23 different industries. Also a great, way to kind of learn sales because you're putting on different hats. One day I'm meeting with tribal leaders to build casinos. The next day I'm meeting with, the U.S. Army, a 3-star general, about building barracks both out in the theater and at home at the different forts and everything. Mm-hmm. And, another day I'm building a library for San Francisco State University. And where I really hit was finding that TARP money. Over the time, and then probably it took about a year of working with the state of Nevada Department of Transportation, and they needed salt storage sheds. They needed something that wouldn't rust. We had aluminum frames. They needed something that could be relocatable, rapidly deployed, and that had a great warranty guarantee that it could go through heavy wind loads and inclement weather. Mm-hmm. So ended up being the youngest person at the company to land the biggest multi-year contract.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, well, it happened, so it ended up being pretty cool. And so that was great. That contract ran for several years. For all I know, they still have that contract going, but long ago left that company. And from there, again, I guess you could say a story of a girl. I ended up moving to New York City and got picked up by a company called eMarketer. Totally different industry market. We're selling business intelligence for social media and marketing, but I was really into it because it was sort of the beginning of social media when things were really starting to show that.
Were you selling real intelligence or artificial intelligence?
It was real artificial intelligence. But no, I actually still refer to a lot of the things that I learned. The president of the company wrote a book, which I go and I look at every day because it applies to content in general, just magnetic content. How do you get people's eyes? How do you attract them and keep them interested? I mean, I think I've shared some of the lessons that I learned from that with Brittany, our person in marketing. And it was a really interesting time. That went well, but I really didn't like New York City. after about 2 years, it was great for the first, 2 years. And then after that, it kind of got a little bit, I'm a little bit of a country boy at heart. Mm-hmm. So I was ready to kind of get out of the city. So fast forward, moved back to Boston, reconnected with actually the person who started that medical company that I worked my very first job in sales. And he said, hey, I'm in this mastermind group and I met this guy, really smart guy, and he's in manufacturing. I know you haven't done manufacturing specifically, but he's looking to build out their medical side of the business further. Why don't you go meet him and see what they have to offer? So I went, had a conversation with him. We ended up talking for, at least an hour. And at the end of it, he's like, well, you want to work here? I said, don't you want to see my resume or references? He's like, no, I know, Mike. You seem to know what you're talking about. Let's get this going. So that was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was awesome. I didn't know much about manufacturing at all at the time, just that you make things and they come off of machines. And
unless you're the guy making it on the machine, they're all going to tell you know nothing about manufacturing.
Well, I get told that all the time, right? But I admit it. I say, hey, the experts are the machinists. Right. I can read a print, and I generally know what it takes to make something now. But certainly, the machinists, the engineers, they're the ones that really take it home. Mm-hmm. And
so this is the entrance into like precision medical device prototyping, but more contract, higher volume manufacturing.
Yeah, it was really higher volume manufacturing. Everybody in manufacturing wants to say they go from prototype to production. It's a little bit, I want to say, it doesn't really fit the business model for high volume production houses to get involved in prototype and product development. Mm-hmm. At the same time, they all want to do it. Mm-hmm.
It is fun. It's challenging.
It's fun and it's challenging. Doesn't really fit the business model. It's a good way to solidify yourself on a part or product line. Mm-hmm. But it can cause issues for your customers because you might not be set up correctly for it. The production jobs are always going to take priority because those are the ones that make the real money. Mm-hmm. A lot of places will back into prototype work to get them, on the production side of things early on. You can solidify that. But it was always a little bit of dissonance there, mm-hmm. right? And a lot of times your customers are looking for more than just making the parts. They want the expertise, the engineering, but the engineers that are in a production house are really geared towards setting up those high volume jobs.
Right.
And that's
they're problem solvers, but it's a different type of a problem.
Different type of a problem for sure. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that there's one is better than the other. Right. It's just different.
Right.
And over the years, I love selling the big deals, hey, let's make 50,000 of these widgets. That's great. But the most interesting stuff was always that early stage work, mm-hmm. Where you really see what the problems are and really see that outside of the box thinking. You just don't get to see enough of it when you're working in production.
Right. There's a lot of innovative ideas at the prototype and pre-production level. And then sometimes they die and never get to production.
Happens all the time.
Yeah. But to your point of, I saw this maybe 10, 15 years ago. We were working government contract, engaging a stamping house to do some copper cups. And it was a prototype contract. So we're not going to do any real production levels. We're there to develop the product, develop the tooling, develop the process, transfer that back to the customer if they want it. And so it's all NRE, non-recurring mm-hmm. engineering. And I went to the production house that was doing legacy items. And I said, legacy items in the volumes are in the tens of millions. These are, I'm making up a number, 10-cent parts. And I said to the owner, I said, do you do engineering? He says, absolutely. I said, what's your hourly rate? He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, how do you do engineering and not have an hourly rate? And he says, well, I don't charge for the engineering. It's built into the tool. It's built into the process. I need the production contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't guarantee you any production. That's not what this is. I might need, 1 to 10,000 pieces. You're not going to amortize your engineering on, penny parts with that. And I think that was one of the first moments I saw firsthand, not knowing really the kind of the business model that we were building out here. Or I knew it, but I didn't like cerebrally sit down and say, this is the angle, this is the strategy. But I think that was one of the earlier conversations where it just didn't occur to me that a production mindset, production focused company is amortizing the NRE and the production versus, and that's difficult, right? Because how do you take on complex challenges if you're not going to be guaranteed the production? Like what is that de-risking and development process look like? They're different processes.
100%. And it's funny you mentioned that because that's really how I got introduced to JAKTOOL. I had been working with, a large medical company for some time, and one of their, I don't even know if he was an intern or if it was just one of his first jobs out of college, but he was working on the MPI, prototype R&D side of things. And we had made a connection. I was working on a few different instruments for that company. And so that's how we got to know each other. Fast forward a couple of years, and turns out he's working at JAKTOOL. And I'd reached out to him because
This is Tom.
Yeah, Tom Z. And he said, "Oh, well, I'm at JAKTOOL now. Maybe we could do something. Why don't you come down and see what we're about, and let's talk business."
Mm-hmm.
So I did, came down, met the team, met Tom, met Paola, met Justin, met Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And, the first thing that struck me is I was like, these are really smart cats. Sharp.
They're smart. They're so intelligent. They don't even know it. we talk about fish don't know fish are wet, and we're always constantly reminding each other of this.
That's so funny. Fish don't know fish are wet.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Yeah, and we had a great conversation, and the first thing I said is like, this would be a great partner for us. I'm constantly running into, I've got all these customers and they want to do all this early stage work, but I have to be so picky and choosy about it. It has to have a clear and unobstructed runway into production, or else there's no way I can sell it up the chain at home.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm like, hey, I want to satisfy my customers. I know that this is a problem that they have, and I want to solve it. And at the same time, it's also good for me because then I can build up a longer term pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
just further out. You're saying, hey, we're solving this for you early. We're going to get you all the way to this, and then we can take it on to production. So I had some projects that we were really hitting some engineering challenges with because they're very complex, either low volume or still kind of in the NPI phase where they were having engineering issues. And there's more background to that story. There was a specific company I was working with where they got bought out by a larger one. All their drawings got translated over poorly. A lot of things didn't make it. So we're constantly having drawing issues. And at the same time, really over-engineered parts.
Mm-hmm.
Surface finishes of, a 2 RMS.
That's what engineers do.
Yeah, well, and that was the head of the department I was working with. He's like, God, these guys just over-engineer stuff all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they were looking to us for that DFM expertise. Design for manufacturability, design for producibility, and it was just more of a heavy lift than our engineering department could really handle, especially considering all the production pressures that we have. You got to have the machines running
right. Nobody
24/7.
Keep spindles on. Nobody's got time to sit and have meetings and give unpaid consulting. Right.
Exactly. And because the engineering was not really built into the business model except amortizing it across production levels, it just gets us back to that sort of contradiction of you want to be there, but you can't do it. So I saw JAKTOOL as a great solution and a great partner for that. Plus the expertise that they showed, I had no doubt that they would be able to take these parts. And sure enough, I sent the most difficult one I had.
That's how it always works. Here's a test, and you look at it, and you're like, oh, this thing's got like 39 operations on 12 different work centers. Yeah, that's med device.
Yeah, exactly. And well, the funniest part of it was I said, this is great. I've got a solution for us. I go and, I'm the type of person that's like, all right, I'm just going to run with this. And then I'm going to show them what I got.
Mm-hmm.
So I go and I get things quoted out and I say, hey, I've got a perfect solution. These guys can do this early stage work that we really don't want to get our hands dirty with because we're too busy on the other stuff. This is going to build up our pipeline. We're going to satisfy our customer. We're going to solve all their problems. We're going to fix the engineering. And they kind of looked at me like I had two heads and they said, well, why wouldn't they just keep that part for themselves and go into production?
I know the look.
Yeah. And I said, well, because they don't want it. And they said, well, why don't they want it? And I said, because that's not their business.
Mm-hmm.
They want us to do the production.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like I was speaking a different language.
Mm-hmm.
And, they had been doing this for a long, long time. I wasn't one to say, you guys are wrong.
Well, yeah, it's different, right?
Right. It's just different.
It's different. So I think we are, it doesn't mean we don't want production, it's if it's the right fit and there's no conflict and that's what our customer wants and it's good value, let's go. Right. Yeah. But I think that there's when you think about the ideation funnel of top of funnel, 100 ideas go in, one thing comes out. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think on the production side, when you have an item in production, you hold on to it, right? Because you don't know when the next product is. Mm-hmm. I think just because I've looked for different signals as I've grown the business, there's no shortage of ideas, right? And the projects, it might not be enduring production for 10 years, right? But there's great engineering projects where 1, 2, 3 year projects to solve really challenging problems. There's a fair amount of design development, fully, system level manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I guess it depends how you look at it. Not everything goes not everything makes maturity to market. It might not be because of anything about the design. It could just be, the demand signals changed, or the solution just can't fit within the form factor or the pricing model that is needed to be competitive, mm-hmm. right? And we've, and interestingly, we've often been hired to be an alternate source of ideas to cover the gamut of the range to help capture intellectual property for our customers, right? So customer says, this is my main idea, let's go down this path, but they want to know that there aren't, alternative ideas that can be executed and make an end run around their investment. So by capturing those alternate parallel paths and lock in and saying there's an alternate path that's better. There's no other alternate paths. We don't have to lay in bed at night because we've invested, we've beat this to death. It's almost like insurance.
Sure. De-risking the investment into what they're building right there.
Right.
For sure.
Right. So I think, both production manufacturing and, this sounds very political. We're all right. But it's just what we've been tuned into over the years to look for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's a big differentiator. JAKTOOL is unique in that respect. Different type of business model, different type approach, different type of thinking. And, it's what attracted me, mm-hmm. Initially. You've said many times, I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder on this, but JAKTOOL is a bit of a unicorn.
That wasn't my original word, but I like that word. Yeah. I give credit to that to somebody else.
Yeah. I love it though, because, mm-hmm. And I guess you could say I was looking for a unicorn too, right? Mm-hmm. Throughout the time and discussing that part and other parts with the team, I just couldn't stop thinking, these guys are doing some really interesting stuff over there.
Right.
And this is like what I like doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's the thinking part of it, right? A lot of times in production, it's like, hey, don't overthink this. Mm-hmm. Don't come up with new ideas. Find what you do and keep doing that. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and again, this isn't a knock on production houses, but it's how they get into the position of, and how you get into this kind of transactional relationship where you'll say, hey, buyer. And the buyer says, hey, send me your capabilities sheet.
Right.
Send me your machine list. And, you want to do that. But at the same time, it's like, that's just boxing you in
Right.
to a specific set of parameters that you're really not supposed to step outside of. And
Right.
they don't look to you to step outside of it. And one of the things I really liked about JAKTOOL is there wasn't a, hey, this is our capabilities list. This is our machine list. This is a, hey, we know how to think,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we know how to think different. And you might bring us a project that we might not have done anything like this before, but that's what we like to do. And that's where our strength lies. And I think that having the strength in thinking, the strength in thinking outside the box, the strength in not knowing exactly the path to go is where you really achieve breakthrough results in the projects and the programs and the products that you're making for your customers.
Right.
And that's what, the customers that we work with come to JAKTOOL for,
Mm-hmm.
is they want that breakthrough thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I'm a bit of a thinker.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I like that. I like to come up with new ways to approach a problem. And maybe it's not on the manufacturing side of thing, maybe it's on the business side of thing, but that ethos runs through everything that JAKTOOL does. And I just think that's so cool. So that's how, fast forward to a couple months ago, and that's how we got together.
I'll say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the compliment, and thank you for being on the team.
I mean, that's how I got here. So, I got to point it out.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of backstory, right? So, to the unicorn in the business model, I didn't wake up saying I wanted this business model. I basically woke up and said, I'm here to work. Put me to work. Right. And these are the demand signals that I got from my peers. Right. So I think it is specialized. It's not as common. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's common is to see different silos of the work we do in different organizations, but to bring it all together and actually have it as a functioning team, right? And the multiplying effect of having the teaming internally, right, really is the agility and speed and efficiency to solve more challenging problems,
Mm-hmm.
right? Difficult to solve very challenging problems when you're waiting for supplier A, B, C, D, F to get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
The clock is ticking, and time is money. So people, so folks would come in and say, I didn't know anyone did anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say, me neither, till I started doing it,
Yeah.
No, it is different. It is a little bit difficult to explain at times, right? Because everyone has a stereotype of what they think it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is a paperwork engineering house. Oh, this is a testing and validation house. Oh, this is manufacturing. Oh, this is ideation, right? And it's tough to say, no, this is a thinking house, right? And it's just built out around STEM, right? Engineering and manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
It's different.
Yeah, it's a challenge too, right? Because in manufacturing, the people, the customers are so used to saying, like I said before, send me your machine list, send me your capabilities list. And I have to go and I have to say, you know what? Throw those away. We can do anything.
Right. Yeah.
Not anything in the world, but you know what I mean, right?
Right.
It's,
right.
So
on the same idea of a machine list, and I get it. That's a very transactional way, quick, you screen it. Oh, they got it. They don't got it. But it goes beyond machines. Like, do you have the people, right? Do you have the processes? That doesn't show up on a list. Like, how does that come through? But just, where at one time when I started to, we'll say early training and building out in my mind what I was really doing here, a customer calls up and says, do you machine plastic? And my answer was, does your item need to be made from plastic? Her answer was yes. then sure, we can do that. Like, it was just, like, I think I'm looking at it, and I think the team here is looking at it at a higher level, right? Like, yes, if there's legacy tech data prints, that's what they need. That's what you need. But if you're coming for a solution, hold on, let's take a step back and understand what are the real requirements, because we're here to problem solve.
Yeah. And, it's funny you mentioned that is, well, does it need to be made in plastic? But it's also asking the questions. There's a lot of question asking that I hear here that I didn't hear before when working with customers from, the MEs, the mechanical engineers, or from, program managers that I worked with. It'd be like, okay, we're not going to do anything until we get a print. We're going to review the print. If it's not perfect, we're going to tell you it's not perfect, and you have to then send us a print that is perfect, and then we'll make your part. Here it's, well, why do you need to do it like that?
Stop tapping the table.
Why do you need to do it like this? Or why are we taking this approach? Or can we take a different approach on this? And that's really, part of that curiosity and, exploring different avenues.
Yeah.
What you don't know what you don't know.
Right. And I think, yeah, you don't know what you don't know. That definitely can be a little bit of head trash, right? Because we're all never going to know what we don't know. But what we do know is we have the confidence to solve problems methodically and get through it. And this kind of goes back to, we were doing our annual company-wide SWOT analysis yesterday, right? And then some of the operations folks started to fall down the trap, right? And it was the facility list trap. And it was, we don't have expertise in this capability. We don't have expertise in that capability, right? You remember this conversation?
Yep.
So, and my answer was, we didn't have expertise in any capabilities, right? But what we're experts in is deducing whether this is this makes sense to go forward. We've got a proven process. We've shown we're thinkers and we learn, right? And we've solved some pretty awesome problems. And when customers come in and they say, have you done this before? So I'll backtrack. Some customers show up at clients and say, we've done this and this and this and this and this. And it's the facility list of a presentation, right? And what I say to customers is every project that we've ever done, we've never done before. We never did it till we were approached, right? And we have a proven track record of doing unknown things, right?
And I love that. It makes it so much more interesting too, right? You're not doing the same thing every day.
Yeah. And there is substance, right? There's machining centers and quality assurance systems, and there's lots of infrastructure built around that, right? It's not, we're not hallucinating, right? We're not hallucinating, but there's a fine line to stifling creativity and thought and also having the wherewithal to back it up.
Sure. And I mean, look, we have a great machine list. I remember the first time I walked through the shop floor, I said, oh, these machines are awesome. You got this DMG over here. What are you guys doing with 3 CMMs?
Right. We are going to inspect things a lot. But to that point exactly, right? And I think we've touched on this, quality, reverse engineering, inspection data in the development cycle is invaluable, right? What are when you're building low rate production and you're seeing variability in testing and validation, right? You need to know, was that what characteristic influenced the data that way, right? That is a huge quality assurance lift, right? It's different. So that's why we have 3 CMMs. When you are in a production setting, right? And you have your quality assurance plans and your general inspection level 1, this table, this sampling plan, this statistical deviation for fallout. At that point, quality is a means to an end, right? And honestly, nobody wants to pay for it, right? It's just, you're going to give me good parts. That's what, you want me to inspecting them costs extra. Well, you know what I mean, right?
Yep.
You're giving me a good horse. But the difference is on the front side, when you're doing that design development work, having 3 CMMs, we've had customers come to us and ask us to do reverse engineering studies. And they say, this study looks like collecting, it was between 50 and 100,000 data points.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do this. This is totally cool. Like, who needs, this is very different.
Yep. It's, and yeah, having that third party validation too, it's a whole nother track right there.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So what are you seeing? What are you seeing as some trends in medical device manufacturing?
That's a good question. One thing, and I've seen it over the years, it definitely seems to follow some of the political winds, is onshoring, repatriation of parts or product lines from manufacturing overseas to manufacturing back at home. Part of the reason it's done, from a political perspective, you've got tariffs that, have popped up and down over the years. But beyond that, I think companies will go in waves with that as well. They say, okay, well, we're going to outsource this overseas because we got cheaper labor rates, but then there sort of comes a hangover with that. I think you've got the cheaper parts, maybe you're hitting your, for the most part, your quality, but a lot of times you can see quality suffer in that respect. On the other side of things, if there are quality issues, it takes much longer to deal with. And that just, the more time that you're debugging those sorts of things, you are losing money. Customs, lead time, et cetera, et cetera. So it really kind of goes across the board. So I've seen that go up and down over the years, and I'm expecting that to come back up over the next couple of years as some onshoring. And where JAKTOOL fits there is, I see a lot of different ways. From developing processes that might be held, a lot of manufacturers, you don't get to see how the sausage is made. You don't get those processes. And one of the great things about JAKTOOL is not only can we develop the processes, but we can transfer that, the tech transfer, provide that either, we can support the low volume to prove out that this can be done back in the States because maybe they haven't done it for several years, or they don't have the processes developed over here, and it's going to be different types of machines. I've looked at prints, looked at operations lists, and it's, you've got different types of machines that are used in different markets all around the world. So there's going to be different approaches and different processes that you develop. But really the strength is, where we fit in and where I see us fitting in is helping bring those back and helping transfer those either to in-house domestic manufacturing or domestic manufacturing from high production partners, or also just doing the low volume work that a lot of these high volume houses don't want to do because it doesn't necessarily fit the business model. But in the unique position that we have in the business model that's been developed, as you said, kind of just doing the work over the years, it does fit. Other trends, and this one's kind of a negative one, but I don't necessarily, it's just something I've been seeing pop up, is that I do see a lot of layoffs from OEMs in the med device world. I just read about a big name today. And what was interesting to me is that I'd been working with this customer for probably the entire time I've been in manufacturing. So 9-10 years.
How is that possible? The baby boomers are at their peak of the healthcare demand should be increasing.
Well, right. But it's funny. This is a customer that they really dropped off their procurement domestically and outsourced everything to different manufacturing hubs that they developed in Latin America and APAC countries. And then, I see, they laid off like X thousands of workers. I read this article this morning. And I'm like, well, why is that? I don't have an answer since I just kind of read about it. But I think to myself, well, maybe you're not working with the right partners. I don't know.
I think I think as a business owner, with a passion for manufacturing and have growing up seeing my high school, community college, my college, all throw out their manufacturing curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
To then now just start to think about bringing it back. Local high school here, I'll give a shout out. The Upper Freehold Regional School District has a Haas tool room mill.
Oh.
And I walked in there, and they'd have a first robotics competition. I walked in there and I saw this thing. My daughter has no interest in this, by the way. So much for succession planning. But I walked in there and I'm looking at this thing and going, oh my goodness, how is this here?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I talked to the superintendent, and he's like, this is pretty special that we have this. And I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Right. Because this should have been in every school system and every college system. And but going back to tariffs and moving around equipment and resources is, so I'll say this. I just, my first company I worked for out of school while I was doing this as a hobby, 60-person manufacturing company. And the owner had a sign on his door, and the sign was, don't hire, automate. There's even 20 years ago, there's manufacturing labor challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, the thing with tariffs is you can bring back, you can find equipment and move it, but are we bringing the labor forces from overseas back here too?
Nope.
so then it goes to demand signals from like workforce labor development, and now we need jobs to fill, we need people to fill those roles, and we need training and curriculum. And I've seen a lot of traction here in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like a faucet you can turn on and off.
Absolutely not.
When you're thinking about positions that require, minimum 5, but, really, 15 years of experience to really do these challenging projects. You need to be mindful that there's going to be a lagging effect for the labor supply, because when those jobs left, those people retired, nobody backfilled them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of speaks to, the cross training we're doing here, where we're we've got a mentor of mine who is a former Rutgers design specialist. He comes in, I believe one night a week, at 5:00. He's a 78-year-old gentleman. I hope I didn't add a year, but he's 77, 78. And he works with our head of manufacturing, and anyone in the building who wants to, spend the evening and, work on lathes and mills. And this is great from the engineering side, because this is real DFM. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to go, I get it, a retaining ring groove or a surface finish, it's tolerance for a reason, right? I'm not putting down the engineering, but they're going to think twice after, trying to put a 16 surface finish on something, put it on the profilometer. They're going to go back, and it's challenging, right? They're going to go back to the desk next time they design something with 16 RA. They're going to really think about, does it need to be 16 RA? But I guess just going back to, the own internal cultivation of talent that we're doing here, it's challenging.
100%. And I love that story about how he comes in once a week and anybody can learn on that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite coworkers that I worked alongside with for, a couple of years, he had been in the industry for like 40, 50 years, and he was my estimator, but he could just pick up a print or pick up a part, look at it and be like, yeah. Oh, well, this is how we do it. And, the machinist on the floor would be like, what does this guy know? And, there's always button heads, right?
Right.
In manufacturing, everybody's got a different approach that they want to take. Are we using a ball end mill here, or are we going to hog it out?
Right.
Boring bar?
Right,
what are we doing?
Right.
But
everyone's got an opinion.
Yeah. But it's that kind of, I don't know, what would you call it? Like built up tribal knowledge that's slowly getting lost over the years. It's like, we need to figure out how to recapture that. And I think it's really cool that you have that approach. Really, it's like this mentor that's coming in, teaching the next generation, hey, here are the secrets, the tricks of the trade that you're not going to get from reading a book. You're not going to necessarily find this on YouTube. You're not going to look at the manual for the machine there, and then it's going to tell you how to do this. This is, it's every much as an art as it is a science when it comes to machining. Yeah. And I mean, it's so cool and such a challenge. And I'm always wide-eyed when, someone starts solving a problem about, how are we going to trepan this
Right.
out of
right.
here? And
But to your point of art versus science, with infinite time and infinite money, it's a science.
mm-hmm.
But precluding that, there's art, right?
I
Because those are the human factors that weigh in on, yeah, we don't have a year and $1 million, right? We've got 10 grand in a month. Figure it out.
Sure. You know the story of Picasso and the square, right?
I do not.
You haven't heard this
You
story?
need to tell it to the audience?
Yeah, I can tell. I love this story because whenever anybody asks me why something costs so much, I tell the story. But there was a lady, and she was in the Piazza della Santa Croce, and she's walking around and she says, "Oh my God, that's Picasso." And she runs up to him. She says, Picasso, will you draw me a picture? And he says, "Well, of course." And so he pulls out a piece of paper, takes a pencil, and draws a little picture for her, hands it over. And she says, "Oh, thank you so much." And she starts to walk away, and he says, "Oh, wait, that'll be $3,000. She said, $3,000? It only took you 30 seconds to do that. And he said, "No, it took me 30 years to be able to draw that in 30 seconds.
Right.
And I think it's such a cool story. And I don't pull it out, aggressively, but I love telling it because there's so much art to it. And being it's just like the person who knows how to swing a hammer, right? Mm-hmm. It's like anybody can buy a hammer, but you need to know how to swing it. And I love that. But yeah, to your point, yeah, that's really something that the art is where it comes in when it comes to time. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think we covered covered all the topics that we wanted to get through today on the discussion.
And it's funny that we didn't look at a single one.
I told you that's how it would go. I did peek. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I guess just kind of, we were talking about art and science just now, and I think about that a lot. And that's really how I approach, we talked in the beginning, how'd you get into sales? And I was like, I never wanted to be a salesperson. I don't even really think of myself as a salesperson. I've always presented it as I'm a problem solver. Mm-hmm. It's you need to make something, you have a problem you need to solve, I'm going to find you a solution. Mm-hmm. And I think in doing that, I always kind of looked at sales as this kind of trifecta of it's a little bit of science, it's a little bit of art, but most importantly, it's the truth. Mm-hmm. And those are the three different points that I think of on the sales triangle. And, the science is, you got to do the work, you got to hit your numbers, you got to, talk to X amount of people in order to close X amount of deals or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then there's the art, and the art is, being able to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, being mm-hmm. able to really
understand their pain,
understand the pain, and be able to empathize. Mm-hmm. And then the truth is believing in what you're selling. And, the only way that you can do that is if you're hooked up with the right company or with the right product. And, that's ultimately what led me here. So, I think we can cap it off on that.
Awesome. Jesse, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You got it. Everyone out there, thank you for tuning in to this episode of JAKTALK. Please take a look in the link below in the description. Jesse's contact information will be there. So if you have any pains in manufacturing or ideas that need, thinking, you can always reach out to him. So thanks again, and follow JAKTOOL on LinkedIn and Facebook, and see you next time. Thank you.